Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Perfect Blend of Success, a culture journey featuring Delicato Family Wines. This webinar is brought to you by Human Synergistics, where we're changing the world one organization at a time. In today's session, we'll share the inspirational culture journey of a highly successful and growing California winery. My name is Mary McCulloch, and I'm the Director of Leadership and Culture Solutions here with Human Synergistics, and I'll be your host today. Our guest speakers are Emily Ingram, Executive Vice President of Human Resources, and Steve Hopper, Vice President of Human Resources. Emily and Steve will share a bit about the winery and then walk us through their 7-year culture journey. A warm welcome to you both.
Thank you so much.
Great. A couple of quick reminders before we begin. We will be providing a recording and slide deck in the coming days, so watch your email for our follow-up. And if you'd like to share comments or questions, we really welcome them. Please submit them through the questions pane, and we will address as many as possible at the end of the session. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Emily.
Okay. Well, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Mary, thank you so much for the invitation. We are so excited to be here and to spend some time with everyone today. This is our agenda for this session, and Steve is actually going to start us off.
All right, well, thank you, Emily, and thank you, everybody, for having us and dialing in. I think a good place to start is just a little bit of a groundwork foundation on who Delicato is, and we can move into our culture journey, our culture story. So first, let's start with kind of who we are, and since history is deeply embedded within culture, I think this is probably a good place to start. Delicato Family Wines is a family-owned private company which has been in business for 98 years with almost 1,200 employees. We makes us only 2 years away from our 100-year anniversary, very exciting time. So for a century now, we've remained true to our values of hard work, integrity, continuous improvement, and one of my favorites, trust and team. Let's go ahead, Mary, go forward on 2 slides. I just want to kind of move through some of our foundation. Move one more, thanks. So our vision as a company is to be a leading family-owned winery with a portfolio of brands customers love. I'll show you those in just a minute. A few years ago, we developed our employee value proposition. And like many of you on this webinar, I get calls from time to time from someone who wants to know what it's like to work for one of my past organizations. This is my answer when I'm asked about what it's like to work for Delicato. I go right to this employee value proposition. It sums up my personal experience here at Delicato Family Wines. A uniquely balanced blend of big company opportunity and family culture, hard work, high standards, respect for our employees and the land. This is who we are. So that for me frames up who we are. On the next slide, you can see our family leadership. We are one of the fastest growing suppliers in the US. Our current family leadership is pictured here, and they work in various functions throughout the business. So 4 generations of the Delicato family have built the winery to what it is today. On this next slide, you can see a bit of our geographic presence here in Central California, and primary locations being from the Sonoma and Napa regions to the Monterey County area, and of course, our initial location in Manteca, California. So on the earlier slide, I mentioned our vision is to be a leading family-owned winery, a portfolio of brands customers love, consumers love. So this next slide just shows a few of those. A good representative sample, and here are some of those brands. We boast a wide array of products for all consumers. You can see we have 2 sales teams on the left. The products on brands on the left is our Delicato team, which focuses on value to mid-price brands like Boda Box, Gnarly Head, Z. Alexander Brown. On the right side of the screen is our Transcendent team, which focuses on our luxury brands. These are brands like Black Stallion, Diora, Torbreck, just to give a few examples. So now, with a little foundation on who we are, let's turn the conversation towards our culture journey, the main topic for today. Emily, and I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. So I thought I would share a recap of my job interview all the way back in 2015 with our CEO, Chris, which is in many ways when our culture journey began. So about midway into the conversation, he said very candidly to me, you know what, while I'm interested in you and your experience, I'm a little worried about the amount of change you're going to want to make. And, in the middle of a job interview, these are not exactly words that get you excited and you're thinking to yourself, uh-oh, did I just lose this job? So like any good L&OD person, I said, tell me more. And I was putting the ball back into his court. So he went on to say that he really wanted someone with broad experience, but was concerned that change would make us, and he used the air quotes, too corporate, causing us to lose our values. And what seemed like a very awkward moment in the interview turned out to be a great moment. It was critical because it allowed us to have a conversation about progress and evolution. And at the end, we agreed that success would and could be achieved by staying true to our values and maintaining our culture. But we also agreed that if I got the job and joined Delicato, we would both have to make a commitment to be thoughtful, to listen to each other, and really truly keep an open mind. So you can see the basis of what eventually became that employee value proposition in this initial conversation. I think it was important that we rejected the premise that maintaining our family culture was mutually exclusive to being a large organization. And 7 years later, I can assure you that a great deal of our success has been in keeping culture the true focal point of all of our work, whether it be in systems or processes, people or structure. And as all of you well know, this involves consistency in standards, whether it's related to your hiring, your leadership, or communication. So that's really how our story begins. And we want to get into some of the details with you. But first, we're going to have Mary take a little time to explain the culture tool and model.
Great. Thanks, Emily. So some of you may be familiar with our circumplex model that we use to present our culture results. So before we start to share their results, I thought I'd give a brief overview as it may be new to some of you. This framework reveals 12 styles of thinking, behaving, and interacting. Now, some are more effective and productive, and some are less effective and less productive. Applying the circumplex to culture, what you have is styles that measure the norms and expectations or unwritten rules that are currently expected of everyone in the organization. So let's look at the general 3 types of cultures that the 12 various styles break down into. The first is cultures that encourage blue, constructive cultures. These are the ones sitting on the circumplex in the 11 to 2 o'clock positions, if we use that clock analogy. These styles emphasize a balance between people and task while meeting satisfaction needs. These blue cultures encourage achievement, growth, development, and building healthy relationships. Now, cultures that emphasize the green passive defensive styles, these are from the 3 to 6 o'clock positions, focus on maintaining personal security and safety through how we interact with others. These green cultures focus on fitting in, being accepted, following orders, and avoiding blame. Cultures that drive red aggressive defensive styles, these are the styles from the 7 to 10 o'clock positions, promote personal status and security through how we engage in tasks, getting things done. These red cultures promote finding flaws, controlling others, winning at all costs, and avoiding mistakes. So each of these 12 styles are normed, and the average score is at that 50th percentile. That's the bold circle, the third circle from the center of the circumplex. So our many years of culture research demonstrate that Higher levels of performance and satisfaction occur when, one, you have the constructive styles above that 50th percentile, and number two, the passive and aggressive defensive styles are below the 50th. So we're not suggesting they need to be zero, but that ratio usually produces strong results and leads to high performing cultures. So that's the sweet spot we're all aiming for. So keep this in mind as we go through the Delicato culture results, and I'm going to hand it back to you, Emily.
Okay, thank you. So we began a very intentional focus on culture back in 2015 with our very first culture survey. And we'll share with you, this was a very challenging time because we ourselves were becoming familiar with the model and the tool, then quickly turning around and introducing it to the organization, and then at the same time receiving feedback from the survey itself. So it's a daunting experience your first time out. You can see that our 15 results showed elevated levels of both defensive styles, the passive in the green and the aggressive in red. This was not exactly what we had hoped to see, not easy to digest, but in the end, it's essential to begin your journey. At the highest level, I'll share with you that our executive team stated a very clear desire to have a more constructive or blue culture. And based on the feedback from this initial survey, we chose then to focus on line of sight, role clarity, and communication. So having identified these opportunities, we rolled up our sleeves. From the survey, our employees told us that we needed more consistent communication with clearer messaging. Employees wanted to receive performance feedback and to stay better informed on the business. So we started by creating a strategic framework called the House of Delicato, which is on the left side of the screen. And using the analogy of a house, we spoke about how to build a strong company, beginning with the foundation. And it's a little hard to see on this slide, but the foundation does include high performance constructive culture. Above it, you see pillars, which give any house stability. And then finally, the roof, which represents our aspiration. So our belief is that when your employees understand how the business works, they then understand their role in success of the business. And this is how we begin to improve line of sight and role clarity. So we also created weekly emails called Friday News Briefs. Those still exist today. We use the news briefs to share stories of success and collaboration. And at the time, collaboration was a very specific behavior we wanted to see more of. So we were encouraging it by highlighting those stories. And then this also kept employees informed about what was going on in the business. Now, finally, we introduced GPS, which stands for Goals, Performance, Success. And it's a concept of real-time performance feedback. So altogether, these efforts really allowed us to begin to address the identified opportunities. So we feel like the House of Delicato deserves a little extra attention. So this slide shows it to you much more clearly. And as just mentioned, if you look at the foundation, you will see that it includes high performance constructive culture. Steve and I call this the money slide because it illustrates the alignment of our strategic framework to every single one of the blue constructive behaviors. And you can quickly see how this would become an excellent tool to articulate the why and the how to employees so they really truly understand that constructive behaviors are fundamental to execution of your strategy. So now I'm going to turn it back to Steve.
All right, thank you, Emily. This slide then picks up our 2018 culture survey. Now, a few slides ago, you saw the 2015, and in a minute, I'll show you all three where you can see this change over time. But for now, there are some subtle shifts that happened in 2018. It was the beginning of our journey and moving in the right direction. So although it's hard to immediately see here, you can see that there is a modest but important and favorable shifts, less red and green on the defensive styles, and then one of the blue styles, and all of them started to lift. One started to lift over the 50th percentile. So let's move on, and I'll show you what we focused on after the 2018, and then of course, then show you all, 3 surveys on one slide. So coming out of the 2018 culture survey, we focused again our action plans and our journey in several different directions. And one of them that really paid off is, of course, in 2018, none of us knew what was coming our way 2 years later with the pandemic. And our focus on communication really paid dividends. So our COVID response was deeply rooted in frequent and transparent communications, which really proved critical with our relationship with our employees during the pandemic. Given the uncertainty of COVID, communication was our strongest tool, reassuring and comforting our employees. We created a COVID microsite, like I'm sure many other organizations did, with daily memos, posters, emails, all flooding of information so employees had quick and easy access to address their questions and concerns. We also hold 2 all-employee meetings. Again, this is not anything unique to most organizations do that. A unique function for us in our all-employee meetings is a full, transparent Q&A session. Questions are submitted in advance, but they're never edited, and we always respond honestly to every question, even when the answer isn't popular. We're not too large to where we can't do that, and that has remained an important element of our all-employee meetings. Our social media strategy down on the left has focused on 3 content pillars. We highlight culture stories, examples of success, collaboration, specifically the blue constructive behaviors. By talking up the desired behaviors, we indirectly address the undesired behaviors like oppositional, one that we want to specifically see decrease. It's much easier to tell someone to keep doing something positive than to stop doing something negative. And that's been another kind of theme and focus in our action planning. The bottom right shows a leadership program that we created called Atlas Masters. And this program uses a 360 tool based on the same circumplex that the culture survey uses. It gives insight into leadership style using the 12 behaviors and has helped us leverage the energy, passion, and language that we use around culture. The response to this program is the first one that we did just a few months ago. The response was very positive, and we believe this will exponentially magnify our focus on culture. So it's just the beginning of something we're going to continue with. In 2022, so now you're starting to see more change. We were due our 3rd survey. Our cadence has been every 3 years, but because of the pandemic, we did not do it in 2021, so we did it in 2022. Based on our work from the 2018 survey, we begin to see that our culture was unique and strong and developing. This led to a slogan we use, which always helps with any type of communication campaign. So we use the phrase that culture is our superpower as we started to see the power that it had for our organization. We created a series of memos, posters, emails, intranet banners, all centered around the importance of feedback, reminders of our accomplishments, and the changes that were made as a result of the previous survey. So again, there's a pattern of survey taking the survey results, action planning, rinse and repeat. A key learning for our HR team was that the simpler you make things, the better the follow through. So for example, we created a refresher on the circumplex to help prep our leaders, many new leaders, before the survey launch, so they had an understanding of the model. We also provided each VP with their own toolkit of results, talking points to help remove objections or obstacles in sharing results and completing their action planning. Like many organizations, action planning happens at the enterprise level, corporate level, and all the way down through functional levels. In the end, we ended up with a 74% participation, which given the hybrid work model we were in, we were pretty happy with. So this next slide now gives you that 3 survey or 7-year journey, you can say. And you can see the change in culture over time, and you can see the red and green behaviors have moved under. Mary was referring to the 50th percentile, so they're starting to tuck underneath that while the blue keeps growing and peeking its head over. When I see this slide, I'm reminded of the old school Kurt Lewin's four-stilled analysis, and you can start to see that a fundamental shift is happening where the constructive or blue force, to use that Kurt Lewin's term, is beginning to overpower the defensive forces. And a key word I'm using there is to beginning to. This is a journey. We're seeing positive results, but we're far from where we want to be. But we're also recognizing that culture is becoming an organizational capability for us, something that is hard to replicate for others, unique to who we are, and offers a competitive advantage. So we feel like we really have kind of a tiger by the tail as we build our culture. For the analytical folks, this slide really helps help appreciate the size of the shift. Those graphs can mute it a little bit. But here you can see improvement in every single dimension, every single style from 2018 to 2022. All but two had double-digit changes and were statistically significant. So we're really proud of these results and where they're taking us. So now, Emily, I'll hand it back to you to highlight one team in particular.
So this is the really fun part because Steve and I can brag a little bit about our own HR team and the results. So you will see key opportunities identified back in 2015 in Perfectionistic and Approval. And as you compare 15 to 22, you'll see that we were able to grow the blue and bring down those red and green behaviors. We were elated this time, just so proud of the entire team's efforts. It really does take the entire team, and of course, very pleased with the results. So how did we tackle our perfectionistic and approval-seeking behaviors? So we decided to tackle this head-on by addressing it through open dialogue. I emphasized to the team that we did not expect perfection, but of course there was always a need for accuracy and pride in our work. We went so far as to say no one on this team ever lost their job because of one honest mistake. We also coined some phrases such as speed over accuracy, or in other cases, it might have been, hey, you know what, precision matters, so that we could give each other cues as to what was important in that moment. And through repetition and transparency, we could see our team relax over time. A truth that many of you can perhaps relate to is that HR teams are often the unsung heroes. This was true of us, and I genuinely believe that it contributed to some of the approval-seeking behavior we were observing. So we realized, hey, you know what? We can do a better job celebrating ourselves and our own contributions. So we began by doing this fun shout out via email called the Culture Champion. It's just a funny cartoon character that looks like a wine goblet, and anyone on the team can send it as a fun form of on-the-spot recognition. We also created an award to honor one team member every year who best role models constructive behavior, and it's called the Standing Ovation Award. You'll see it on the left, and notice it's blue intentionally, and every team member is invited to submit nominations. We actually just closed the nomination window for this year last week, and we always present the recipient at our holiday party, so that'll come up in December. What else? We use our monthly team meetings as a vehicle to keep the culture conversation alive, and culture is always a standing topic. Groups of 2 or 3 HR team members will select any culture topic and present it in any way that they wish. They can show a video, have us play a game, or have us read an article in advance. This gives people a true sense of ownership, and of course you find out what's important to them. And then afterwards, we occasionally host team lunches, such as our annual barbecue. And of course, that fosters some great team building. Finally, we want to mention that we have conducted roundtable lunches every single year for 7 years. Even we didn't do lunches through COVID, of course, but we still had the roundtables. I send questions in advance, which gives people time to think about their feedback. And then we simply, break bread in an open forum. And we've found that it's an extremely effective way to find out what's on people's minds in real time. And it gives us a chance to course correct if needed. You don't want to wait until 3 years from now, right, till your next survey to find out what's on their minds. So that is, bits and pieces of our story. And now we'd like to share some of the key learnings that have occurred during that 7-year period. So first, we would say know who you are and what you're good at. Naturally, we've been talking about evolution and change management today, but not to the degree that we would compromise our values. And as you heard Steve say, you know, we believe culture is our superpower. And as you have heard us talk today, we have really made it a priority to embed constructive behavior into so many aspects of our work, starting with the House of Delicato, the way that we recognize employees, our development programs, again, called Atlas Masters, communications, and of course, even our value proposition. Second, something we didn't talk a whole lot about, but you know, hold leaders accountable. Delicato leaders are expected to report culture progress on a quarterly basis. And furthermore, we've integrated culture into a mandatory shared goal so that all bonus eligible managers are evaluated on their culture work, and that impacts their year-end bonus. Third, as HR practitioners, Steve and I would say to you, we're extremely passionate about culture, but we might then have a tendency to get in the weeds. I would say for myself, I know it's true, and as a result, I then unintentionally overcomplicate things. We have found that success is more easily achieved when you make it simple for leaders to share the results and do action planning. I am definitely not a fan of hand-holding, but what I will say is that if you can make it plug and play, it definitely saves you heartache and more work later. And then finally, to close, communication matters. We plan all of our communications for our culture survey results, the sharing of the results, the survey itself in advance. And as always, you know, it's in the consistency and it's in the messaging. And so collectively, all of what we've shared with you today is what we describe in the wine business as the perfect blend of success. And that is all. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much, both Steve and Emily. Not sure if the little graphic played. Well, I just want to say that number one, thank you. And also, you know, one of the powerful takeaways for me is the quality and the consistency of communication that you've used in various forums that encourage and really bring these constructive behaviors to life. You know, they're not just some idea, they're not some theoretical notion, but it's actually how you're doing business every day. And I've been so inspired seeing how you've used communication, and I feel like it's just such a strength that you've done in your organization. Oh. So with that said, we have a lot of questions that have been coming in. So let's start with a first question here. All right, so here, was there a common learning that leaders talked about when you began your remeasure?
Steve, maybe I can start. I'm sure we have similar but maybe different points of view. I would say that this is our third survey, and that there was this sort of organizational-wide sigh of relief. Everyone, of course, was very excited to see the results. But what came after that excitement was, wow, hard work really pays off. But not just hard work, the consistency and the persistence over a 7-year period, because of course you have some doubts in the back of your mind through the pandemic and being in a remote situation. You know, what does that do to your culture? But we continued to make it a top priority. And so that, I think, was a key learning and takeaway, is that hard work and consistency in that effort really pays off. But also a compliment to the HR team that with this being the third iteration, we've gotten smarter and better. So our tools and our support to the leadership team in sharing the results, in preparing and conducting the action planning has gotten better. So our team felt more comfortable, and then so did the leadership team. So Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
I would just add is what I joined Delicato in 2018, right after the survey. And what I've seen in 4 years then is a deepening, or no, just a circumflex language, blue constructive behaviors, what red means, what green means. The knowledge of that gets deeper, but it makes its way into everyday language. And I've seen that with other organizations, whether it's like a situational leadership model, whether it's a personality and Myers-Briggs type thing, is how much does that language permeate down through just every day, the way we converse. So I think the consistency leads to a common vocabulary in how we identify and measure not only leadership, strength, development, but also our culture.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you both. All right, here's another question. With the success of your remeasure, what's next in terms of people development?
So I'm going to be really transparent, which is it's a little intimidating to get really great results. It's wonderful, but I've shared with the leadership team in HR that it's a little scary because, of course, as a human being, you worry like, oh no, what if we slip? What if the results suddenly, go backwards, or it becomes at least psychologically harder to continue to grow your blue and to continue to diminish the red and the green. So I guess I'll say that first, just very honestly, there's a set of mixed emotions. In the HR team, every October, we do an annual strat planning session, and it just happened to be on Friday of last week. And one of the things that we talked about was focusing on our own team's development and retention. And that we use this phrase that we were going to double down on culture, double down on recognition, and double down on development. And I think the key message there is that you can't get complacent. Like anything that's worth your time, anything that's important, the persistence, the consistency, it matters. You have to sustain those efforts even when you've done really, really well. So in many ways, it's doubling down on the things that we've shared today that have contributed to the success, and digging in further to continue that momentum and really making sure that we don't lose it. It's a little generic. I'm sure Steve can probably add some color to that.
Well, we highlighted a few areas where, in terms of, Mary, your question on kind of what's next, people development, the Atlas program we started at, Emily referred to or referenced a goal, right, around building the blue constructive culture, that it's a mandatory goal for all leaders. So those are some things that we started, but there's still a lot more about how we embed into our existing processes. One example, so Emily, on our Friday strat planning session, right, here's just another example, Mary, of more work to where we want to go with it, is not viewing diversity and inclusion initiatives as a separate thing from culture, right? Culture is very much embedded in that, right? And more specifically, when you think about a self-actualizing culture, it is so conducive and compatible to your diversity and inclusion initiatives, right? So we are bringing the two of these together, so they're not separate things. They are one thing or two things complementing the same thing.
And building on your comment about Atlas Masters, that is this high potential leadership class that involved that 360 tool, which utilizes the circumflex. So we had, I'll say, only 12 high potential, high impact leaders in that class. We want to replicate that, build that momentum, and then use the graduates as culture ambassadors, if you will, so that more deeply they understand the circumflex and how that impacts their leadership style, the more sort of trainers and ambassadors you have spread throughout the organization. So that's something that we have only begun to tap into, but as we look towards the next few years, I think it will be critical to future success.
That's great. And just for clarity, we use the Acumen Leadership Work Styles 360 in your Atlas program, which worked beautifully. All right, so here's another question. For those in our audience considering beginning a culture change program, what one or two components do you recommend as essential to stay on course, or to include in early planning, actually, as well?
Well, in fact, you just sort of said one of them, Mary, which is that planning is really important. Especially when it's your first time. I mean, it took us months to talk about it and to plan. And so I would say if you think it's going to take 2 months, give yourself 3. There's a lot of learning and education that has to happen for you and your HR teams, and understanding the tool. And then you have to think about the timeline, educating the rest of the business as well. But before you do the planning, I would say get the buy-in of your leadership. We are a privately owned and operated organization. We are, owned by a family. So in our case, the leadership, the CEO and our COO are a set of brothers. So first, we really needed to get their buy-in along with the executive team. But I would talk to, your CEO, if you're, your CHRO, whoever it might be. But it takes a village. I mean, if anyone's not on board, you want to know that headed in. But their support is critical, and they can't just give lip service. It really requires, as we've stated many, many times, full all-in commitment and sustained over time. So those would be my 2 suggestions.
I would add one, which is, I mean, it assumes the first one Emily just shared, is in terms of staying the course. And my comment here is really any change initiative. Which is, don't let setbacks define your journey. It is part of any change, culture change in particular. And maybe the more internal employees actually criticize maybe times where we are not in a particular meeting, whatever, as blue or constructive as we aspire to be. That doesn't mean you're backsliding. It just means you still have some work to do, but not to let that define the journey. 7 years, right? That's what we're only measuring it every 3 years. So we don't get caught up. It's kind of like weight loss, right? We don't get caught up in these ebbs and flows, which are natural. You measure it over time.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay. So here's an interesting question. It ties into what you've already been talking about. Can you share some more examples of steps you've taken to improve communications in the workplace?
So for us, as you heard in the story, I interviewed and joined the company back in 2015. And almost immediately, one of my first suggestions was we need someone who's in charge of corporate communication and employee engagement. And I would like to oversee that function. And it was a bit of a debate. Communication, depending on the size or of the organization or the industry that you're in, often can be its own function. Often it's part of the marketing team. But I said, look, there's a difference between outward brand management and PR and employee-focused communications. And employee-focused communications is going to be critical to our success. And where else, what better department than human resources? So admittedly, it took a few years to get our wish, but we do have a director who oversees all of our communications and employee engagement. And so, and that person is a direct report of mine. So what a perfect blend of the team of HR. So we're so lucky because we're able to make communication a key part of every change management initiative, all project management. And he, of course, doesn't just help the human resources team. He's essentially the ghostwriter for the CEO. So you may not have the luxury of having an individual who is responsible for that. It may not be in their title, but I would say find someone who has a passion then for writing, someone who is good at it, because whether it's in memo form or video, it can be fun posters, emails, all of that matters. And if you find someone with a knack for it and an interest, it really becomes the key. It's also, I think, difference in mediums. We were forced, all of us during the pandemic, to come up with meaningful communication that wasn't in person. We used to be a small organization of only 600 all the way back in 2015. Now we've doubled in size and we are in a hybrid workforce. So it is in video clips, it's in using the intranet It's in physical posters because we have a professional staff, but we also still have production staff, people who are, in the vineyards, carrying barrels, moving hoses. Those people are far less likely to be on email. So you have to appeal to all the different types of employees. And so email will work for professional employees in accounting and marketing, but not, right, to those vineyard workers, winemakers. So that's where posters and cards, home mailers, whatever the subject that you might be speaking of, become very, very beneficial. Creating toolkits and talking points for the leaders, so when they have a quick 15-minute huddle in person in the morning before the shift starts, you've already given them the talking points that you want them to touch on. So that's where Steve and I say that while we're not fans of hand-holding, we have taken to creating toolkits, FAQs. We will send communication in advance to key leaders a day or two before it goes out to all employees, so that they have a few days to think about the questions and then come to us with questions, get their clarity before they then have to begin to communicate. So you have to sort of use, I think, an all hands on deck approach, but also find different mediums. And then, of course, we're just lucky because we have a director of comms. Steve, what did I miss?
And a good one at that. No, I think that's a good answer.
Great. All right. There are some really great questions here. So here's another one. What drove you to know you needed to invest in your culture? So knowing that that would take years. So what was that initial, impetus to get started?
I better answer that one, Steve, because I joined sooner than you did.
Yeah, I wasn't here during that time frame.
It's going to sound a little cheesy, but it's true. It was the realization that we had achieved some great success. We had 90 years under our belt, and there comes this time where you say, well, now what? The wine industry and adult alcohol beverage is very competitive. When you think about your own discretionary income, just as a mom or a dad or head of a household, where do you spend your dollars? And particularly in this economy, those choices become harder. Wine can be considered, depending on who you are, a luxury or a necessity, right? And there was a time when we realized that if we were truly to grow market share, one, we needed leaders who, as our CEO says, had been to the top of the mountain. And so that meant maybe some changes, hard decisions in your leadership team, but it also meant focusing on our culture. We always had this intuition, this feeling that our culture was special, but we didn't want to wing it anymore and take it for granted. And so it was difficult because, as I shared with you in my interview, there was, and there still is, a desire to push away from things that feel too corporate. And so this tool had to feel like a good fit for us. We needed something formal, but not too formal. So there's this constant checking, like a gut check of, are we doing the right thing, but in the right way? And so it was truly a desire to not lose our edge, and also an acknowledgement that we probably couldn't do it ourselves without some help, and that we'd been maybe a little bit lucky and a little bit, we did the right things, but not necessarily paving the way as formally as we do now, if that makes sense.
Great. All right. Steve, anything to add on that?
No, that predates my time. Like I said, when I picked up in 2018, I just saw that what in hindsight became a bit of a tipping point in our culture. But no, I think Emily covered that well.
Great. All right. So here they also asked, did you capture the ideal culture? And if so, can you describe what that looks like?
So we first took the ideal survey in 2015. And what was very interesting was that the leadership group at that time actually identified a decent amount of red and green as being in the ideal. Now, I had actually been familiar with human synergistics in my prior companies. So I was excited when I joined in 15 because when you're new, everything is difficult. And I thought, oh, thank goodness, at least I know the circumflex. But I was a little bit confused by the amount of red and green behaviors that were perceived as ideal. So I was thinking, okay, that's interesting. That's not what I would have expected. But in acknowledging the desire for more success and a change in leadership, we consulted with Mary and said, you know what, this is our third survey. Maybe it's time to revisit the ideal. And with this second ideal, I'll tell you, it shifted dramatically. So when we talk about leadership, presence, support, and commitment, not only is it necessary in the actual execution of the survey, the sharing of the results, and the work on action planning, but in this case, it significantly impacted the ideal itself. And red and green are almost invisible on the new 2022 ideal, and the blue is just off the charts. So a change in leadership perspective and, you know, butts and seats has made a significant change in our organization. And maybe, you know, I didn't think about this earlier to the earlier questions that Mary shared. I think that will also make a difference as we look towards the future. So what's going to be different in development and everything else and building the momentum? The top leadership is very different now in 22 than it was in 15. And that matters. That makes a difference. So I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, I think you did. And there's another question here that's kind of on, it's a piggyback off of this one, in that they were asking, did you use the OEI as well? Did you, either of you want to speak to that a little bit and how that provided some of the roadmap and learnings around your systems and structures?
Steve, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I can. And a couple of terms we're using here, Mary, I just don't know, you know, like ideal state, right? That is, the slides that we showed was our well, you saw the HR results, but we saw overall company results. Ideal state is the same survey, but completed by our executives in terms of what they want out of the company. Right? So I'm not sure if people are familiar with that.
You can tell it's an educated group because they're asking these questions. So
yeah, exactly.
They know human synergistics pretty well.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the OEI, OCI, you know, me being new to this model in 2018 was a bit of a learning curve there. But yes, we did two surveys, then we did the OCI and the OEI in 2022. We did not do that in 2018. We wanted to have more depth and understanding of the results, knowing that we're that tipping point in 2018. We're tipping the right direction in 2022, even though it is a second survey, right, that we're asking employees to take. So there's a bigger commitment on everybody's part to take it. We believe that the information we would get out of it would be help right to a deeper cut, which did help us. It was the combination of the two tools that helped us focus on our key initiatives for 2022 around empowerment, employee involvement. It was the OEI helped get us there.
And it's a lot. I mean, we were not prepared or ready in 18. So you might say, well, what changed? It was just overwhelming. And we just didn't feel that we could do it justice. With now 3 under our belt, we said, okay, you know, but it's why Mary and her team of consultants are so critical, because I don't think we could have done it without our consulting team. It can feel very daunting, and but it adds color to the results. Otherwise, you feel almost compelled to go and ask employees again, what did you really mean by that? And you don't want to over survey. At least I'm not a fan of that. So if you can invest the time and the dollars in both, we would suggest it when you feel like your organization is ready to digest it all.
Right. So there's just a couple of more. I know we're getting to time, but I'm going to try to squeeze in just a couple of more questions because they're just really good. So someone asked about if you could explain the line of sight comment. Could you define that? Weren't clear on exactly what you intended with that.
So line of sight, we interpreted as employees not understanding what their role in our success is. So they hear us talk about, oh, we want to sell this many million cases of wines, and we want to have a portfolio of brands that consumers love. And they're like, okay, so what does that have to do with my day-to-day job? And if they don't understand that, and it's just a bunch of words, how do they come to work every day excited about that idea? How do they contribute to our success? And so that's really where the House of Delicato came in, because we said, well, gosh, maybe we've assumed that they understand, first of all, what those goals mean, but maybe they don't understand all the parts of the business. You know, what does supply chain management mean? What do they do? Because if you don't work in supply chain management, you don't know. Well, they're the ones who help us get the boxes and the glass. The glass is what you pack the wine in. So maybe you make the wine, or you bottle the wine, but where did the glass come from? Where do the stickers and the labels come from? So creating a broader understanding of all the parts of the business, and at a high level, how do all the functions within the business fit together? So when you create a truer understanding, and then you talk about the long-term and the short-term goals, and help employees understand, hey, does your day-to-day job fit within the foundation of the House of Delicato, or does it fit within one of the pillars? If you're not sure, go ask your manager. And so there are a great deal of talking points and explanations behind the House of Delicato. But for the HR team, I think some of our team are on this call now, we always say our key work is in the foundation and helping build and foster a high-performance constructive culture. We deliver accurate and actionable data. Those are two components of the foundation of the House of Delicato. We don't really have as much impact on supply chain management or quality winemaking, right? We help hire the people in those functions who do that work. But when you understand how you fit into the big puzzle, that's what we consider line of sight. So hopefully that adds some clarity.
I think that's helpful. Perfect. Another quick one, and then I'll ask one final question because I want to be mindful of time. Someone wanted to know, I'm trying to go back up to that question because I thought it was a good one. Could you say more about plug and play? What did you do to simplify?
Steve, you were the master behind this.
So recently, I'll give you maybe a recent example. Just a couple months ago in July, we had our global sales meeting. So that's all of our sales force together, marketing, kicking off, getting ready for a new year. So culture was actually a big part of that agenda. So to use an example in there in terms of plug and play is taking one of the challenges, and Mary, you and I have talked about this, right? When you do the OCI and the OEI, it is literally pounds and pounds of paper, right? There is data, there's lots of data there. So simplifying it, getting it the right information to the right people. So at that global sales meeting then, each sales VP had a toolkit to walk into their breakout session where we made it very easy for them in terms of their circumflex, if they had before and after. So sometimes with reorganizations, right, you don't get a before, snapshot, you just get your current data. So giving them the relevant data, the tool in a PowerPoint that already calls out their strengths, their opportunities, their changes, and then leads them right into their facilitated discussion that those sales VPs were leading. So plug and play is about simplifying and giving those leaders the tools to easily take action on.
Yeah, I mean, they literally had a PowerPoint where all they had to do was just read it in advance. I mean, we did all the work. That's weeks of work. In previous years, we even created an action planning template that they could use. Some leaders like it, some leaders don't. It doesn't matter to us if you use it or not, but we don't want the objection or the excuse that you didn't show me how to do it. And so then they don't do it because then it becomes an excuse, right? So we say, if you like it, great, use it. If you don't, but that's where we say, gosh, hand-holding, yes, but then really what's the excuse for not presenting it and leading a session in doing the action planning?
Great. So here's an interesting question. How did your CEO reinforce your projected desired outcomes?
So there's a number of ways. I mean, our executive team, the C-suite, we meet every month. It's usually a half-day meeting, and culture is at least a quarterly topic. We also report out, as we shared on our results, in a monthly report. But the communication, as we've talked about, is really a core. We commit to being transparent, and we have all employee meetings that occur twice a year. We have the Friday news briefs. And so we use all of these vehicles to talk about culture and the House of Delicato. So there's not a video message, a memo, or a Friday news brief that would not include some reference to the desired behaviors. After the initial results came out, we dedicated, I would say, 25 to 30% of the all-employee meeting to culture and to culture survey results. And he calls out his expectation of his leadership team and the timeline for what will happen. So you don't give leaders a way out. When the CEO says it in a video, over the next 30 days, you will hear your team results and you will be included in the action planning process. It's a call to action. And remember, it's a required shared goal amongst all his bonus eligible leaders. So multiple layers down. And so we're held accountable, and we know that our year-end bonus depends on it. So it comes in, again, the consistency, the reinforcement of communication and messaging. And then, of course, he relies on his C-suite to carry that message. The HR team, I'm very proud to share with you, we sit in on leadership meetings occasionally throughout the organization. Our COO, for example, invites me to sit in on his monthly team meeting with his direct reports. So there I have the head of winemaking, the head of supply chain, as an example, and I have an opportunity to talk about culture and culture work and to reinforce it. So the HR team is a trusted resource and partner, and in those opportunities we infuse sometimes subtle, sometimes not so subtle opportunities to remind the leadership team. But it's the more that you can find the ways, big or small, to talk about it and just make it part of your daily vernacular, the better off you are. And the question is very insightful. It takes your CEO constantly sharing the message and what his or her expectations are of the leadership team.
Terrific. Excellent. So we'll do one final question. I appreciate everyone's great questions, and I appreciate the patience for Emily and Steve. So what tangible business results can you point to as a result of this work, including things like turnover, et cetera?
Oh, Steve is our data guy. Steve, you want to, we'll tag team, but you are like our data guru.
Well, turnover, I mean, that's a tricky one, right? Because I think I think every organization is dealing with elevated turnover, irrespective of what's going on in your organization. So I think that goes back to what period of time are you measuring and what's going on. Emily, what comes to mind for me in terms of maybe where culture is paying dividend is we did a major acquisition last year, understanding our culture, but then also having the newly acquired company also then be part of the survey that we took, gave us new data, and it goes back to a way to talk about who they are, who we are, who we collectively can be into the future. So I believe it played a role in accelerating that activity.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And a couple of data points that I would share with the participants is that when I joined the organization, there were pockets in the United States where we had some trouble recruiting, and we just didn't have a great reputation. I'll be very blunt. Texas was a state where we just struggled to find salespeople. That is no longer a problem, and we have more applicants than we can really deal with. And what we hear is that people have heard our culture story and they want to be a part of it. They want to make money. They want to, they have to support their families, but they're tired of the rat race. They're tired of feeling unappreciated. And that's a little harder to measure without a doubt. But if you have a good talent acquisition team, they can help you. And the candidate flow is one place where we have felt a very positive uptick. And it's also in the narrative that people are sharing with us. During the pandemic, everyone was struggling to, if you're a CPG company, to sell your product, right? Supply chain was a hot mess. And we were shocked that during the lockdown, we were able to sell more wine in our company's history. Our value brand and biggest brand is called Boda Box. You may drink it, you may have seen it on Steve's, early slides. That brand went to 10 million cases during the pandemic. We were stunned, and we were a little caught off guard because that goal came earlier than expected. With the sales volume, of course, comes increased profitability and excitement in your team. And I'm sure that leveraging our culture and the strength of our culture during a time when we couldn't be together is how we rallied to produce record numbers of wine. We were shipping and bottling, historical numbers, and made a nice profit during the pandemic. So that is, of course, for the CEO and the family, one of those moments where you think, wow, this work is paying off. And I think having started it in 15, we had enough experience under our belt for it to hit at the right time when COVID struck. I don't know if we would have been so lucky had we not put in the effort years before. So we've seen it in a number of places, just profitability, but also, candidate flow and other places that Steve and I've mentioned. So it's been a really fun story, and you definitely feel like you can reap the rewards. So great question. Great question.
Yeah, really great questions. So we're at our time. So we thank everyone for joining us. We hope you've gained some insights and some ideas. If you're looking to begin a culture journey, or if you're already in one, maybe this gave you some new inspiration. A huge thank you to Emily and Steve for speaking with us and sharing their insights and knowledge. If you have questions about culture or leadership development solutions, feel free to contact me. And if you have any specific questions for Emily or Steve, we have included their email in the PowerPoint deck that you'll be receiving. So with that, we thank everyone again for attending, and have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary.